Now, you mentioned the Holland family. Of course, they were the owners at that time. And talk a little bit about them, if you could.
They were a family from Lawrence. I worked at the Morris Holland, but it was his father, Patrick, that purchased the park from the utility company that had gone bankrupt in the Depression. And he made some little changes. And the park was considerably different, not only the ballroom, but the whole park than it is today.
Yeah.
Morris Holland enjoyed the park very much. He loved being there. He also loved baseball.
Okay.
He had a handicapped left hand, so he couldn't really play a lot of baseball, but he loved to play softball.
Oh, son of a gun.
And he was the pitcher.
And so they had a space for...
You, if you could play softball, you had a job at Canobie.
Is that right?
And they had some very interesting athletes there.
Yeah.
We had, who also worked the park, Ralph Wolfendale, who was an athletic director at Lawrence High School, was also one of the 7 blocks of granite at Fordham University.
Oh, wow.
When he was a senior, he had a young sophomore teammate on the Fordham team named Lombardi, who went on to have a little career in football in later years.
Really?
We had Jack Barry was the coach at Methuen High.
Well known.
Left there, became, I believe, MIT coach, athletic director. You had people like that. Had, coaches from Woodbury High. All played in the ball. And a lot of high school baseball players. So you would play every Friday morning.
Okay.
Used to be funny because...
But it must have been great. It was like a big family doing that.
He had the bases, the bats, the balls, all that. And then evenings during the week, on occasion, not every, you would have a game with the jockeys from Rockingham Park.
Oh, really? Yeah.
The mayor of Lawrence had a team he'd bring up. The Lawrence Police Department had a team. So you got to play 3-4 games a week.
That's great. That's great.
And on Friday mornings you played.
It was part of their attraction,
It was part of the attraction. And then, like I said, he loved baseball.
Yeah.
He loved baseball. He always went to the Manchester baseball dinner. Always had a table. You'd be standing there, and all of a sudden, Yogi Berra's standing there.
Yeah, well, that must have been neat.
Maury McDermott. Maury McDermott was a young guy, left-handed guy, tall, 6'3" guy, probably 20, 21 years old.
Yeah.
Could hit like a fiend. This was before the days of the designated hitter. He once pitched like a 17-inning game. He won the game in the 17th inning with a home run that he hit. Quite a character.
Yeah.
But it was Yogi Berra was a character. He was down on a Saturday night.
Right.
And remember, we're talking about the days they didn't make the kind of money. We're talking about 9 million, 14 million, 16 million a year. He was offered $100 to go up at intermission, stand on the bandstand, and talk for 5 minutes.
Oh, really?
No way. He wouldn't touch it. Said, I'm not getting up before 11. I said, Yogi, you're going to be 34,000 people tomorrow. That's baseball. I'm not going to do that. So I'll sign autographs.
Yeah.
So I stood next to the soda fountain. There was a door.
Yeah.
And he stood there, and he had a wooden pencil, number 2 pencil, signed autographs. And after about 8 minutes, he turned to me and said, "Where's the lid?"
Yeah, yeah.
Like I'm going to turn the eraser and it's going to be
right.
You know? I said, "I think we're done, Yogi." Anyway.
That's a great story. What was the changeover of ownership? What was the reason for that, and how did that come about in general? Do you remember?
The change in ownership happened around 57.
Okay.
I was just getting out of the service then, so I wasn't around. But I can imagine that Morris' family was growing.
Well,
his family was growing, and it got to be a bit much with the competition that was going on everywhere. And these people came around from, actually, they had concessions at Palisades Park in New Jersey.
I see, yeah.
One of the things we did as young people, one day, we had one of the ball players, by the way, it was a great shortstop we had on it. His name was Jackie Hickey.
Okay.
His sister was Ruth Hickey.
Oh,
Ruth
really?
Hickey, husband was Johnny Pesky.
Oh, really? Wow.
Johnny Pesky used to be at the park all the time.
Oh, wow. That's great.
But one time when they decided that we're going to take off on a Sunday night after the park closed, because everybody in this group was off, 4 of us, was off on Monday.
Yeah.
And we were going to go to Coney Island and Palisade Park and ride all the roller coasters.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's
And then come back because we had to be back for work on Tuesday. I got to remember, there's no
that right?
93, there's no
Yeah.
95 in those
Right,
days.
right.
It's a different ride. So Hickey said, well, okay, he says, my brother-in-law, Johnny, is in Detroit right now. There's nobody at the house. We'll stay at Johnny's house tonight.
Yeah. Wow,
Sleep there.
that must have been
It's
neat.
part way down to New York. Yeah, well, a little bit of the way down
Yeah,
to New York. So we
right.
did. We stayed at Johnny Pinsky's house that night. We drove down to New York, and we went over to Coney Island first, went on the roller coasters, went to Nathan's and had a hot dog, over into the Palisades Park, rode the roller coasters.
that sounds great.
And now going back to the city, right outside of Times Square. We said, well, what are we going to do now? Well, we'll get a place and we'll have supper. We'll go to a movie and we'll sleep.
Yeah.
And then we'll get in the car and drive home. And we looked up at this theater.
Those were the days.
It was Gary Cooper in a cowboy movie.
Yeah.
Perfect for sleeping.
Yeah.
I'll put the money down. Money was 50 cents something in those days.
Yeah,
you know.
right.
Go into the theater. Well, the movie turned out to be High Noon.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well,
Nobody
this was
slept a
pro-
wink.
Yeah, right,
And
right, right.
The movies were
That
over.
was a great movie.
Now we got to
yeah.
drive back to get back to the lake.